If you send in your vote on time by mail, but you send it in on time by the printed deadline, and the government loses your mail for a couple of days, should your vote be thrown out? Should it not count? That's the issue that we're talking about today. The Supreme Court just agreed to hear a case that could literally decide or change how and when millions of votes get counted in 2026, the next big election. We're going to cover that today. We're going to talk about what's at stake and how the outcomes can shake out. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is another installment of Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Before we dive into this important issue, remember, hit that subscribe button if you like the content here, not just from us, but the other folks on the Legal AF Network. We do a lot of hard work here trying to bring these legal issues in digestible format to everyone. So we hope you enjoy it. We hope you find it valuable or interesting. Brian, where do you want to dive in on this issue today?
Well, I think it's important that people understand the fundamental issue here that's going on, which is Republicans, conservatives do not want it to be easy for people to vote. Period. Full stop. Why? Because typically working class voters, Democratic voters, non-Republican voters have a hard time getting to the polls. They work multiple jobs. They find it difficult with childcare issues to get there. And so they want to minimize the number of people that can actually vote for a candidate who is not a conservative. Full stop. Yeah. Again, that's what this is really about. Because if what we were really about is trying to make it easy for people to vote, we'd be looking for every which way we can to get votes counted, right? I mean, every single one we can. So the core argument that these idiots raise is election day means election day. It doesn't mean election week. It doesn't mean election month. It means election day. And because that's what they want. They also want you to show up with ID, with fingerprints. I mean, this goes back many, many decades in this country to where people used to have to take tests to see if they were qualified to vote. And that disqualified people who were illiterate or who didn't have education, which again got rid of basically progressive or left of center voters. So
right now
that's
we know
what
that
we're really talking.
Now we know that those things are civil rights violations. That's what those things are. That's a way to disenfranchise voters. And you're right. That's absolutely right. That's the goal here. So let's talk about the background of this case. This case comes from Mississippi. Mississippi law lets mail-in ballots that are postmarked by election day, meaning put in the mailbox and received by the post office by election day, count if they're then received by the entity that's going to be counting the votes within 5 business days. The Republican National Committee sued, saying that this violates federal law that sets a single election day. Like Brian said, the whole talking point is it's election day, it's not election month or whatever garbage that they want to keep spewing. And then the Fifth Circuit, the Court of Appeal over there, agreed with that argument. And they said that the ballots must be received by election day. And now Mississippi, who is responding to the lawsuit by the Republican National Committee, appealed and they're arguing basically that this punishes voters by making their votes invalidated for the government's own, for the postal services, the post office's own delays, because that's really what this comes down to. And my commentary on this is I absolutely agree with that argument because how ridiculous is that? You're entrusting the government, the post office, to get your mail in on time, and it's delayed, and then your vote just gets totally nullified. And that's not fair. That's another form of disenfranchising voters who couldn't show up on election day. They want to send it in, they want to be diligent, send it in by mail. I vote by mail. What if my vote got invalidated? That's absolutely ridiculous because it's by no fault of the voter. So, what's your take on that argument, Brian?
In other areas of the law, it's generally accepted that putting something in the mail, in the post office, getting it postmarked, constitutes delivery, right? That there is a presumption that it's been delivered properly if it's put in the mail. And here, this occurred during COVID. That's one of the ironies here, which is people couldn't go to the polling booth for a number of reasons. It occurred during COVID. And it seems like this is their perfect vehicle for advancing this argument. And I just struggle with this because if you've given it to the post office, you've effectively given it to the government. You haven't given it to Todd down the street who's 8. And you've said, Todd, would you do me a favor and take this to the county recorder or the county election official's office? No, you gave it to the United States Post Office. and you put it in a post box and it's marked. And in this case, particularly as long as it was postmarked before 7 p.m. at the end of election day, it was considered valid. And then what really this also does, Shant, is it looks at rural voters, right? People who were far away from the city. Again, more likely to disenfranchise. But the funny, ironic thing about it is there's a lot of MAGA voters out there that this fall into this description as well, right?
Yeah, much like a lot of things that the MAGA movement is pushing for, my response is sometimes careful what you wish for, right? When the shoe is on the other foot, if this starts disenfranchising the MAGA voters, they're going to regret it. Just like how when they're trying to give the president immunity for everything or give the executive unlimited power. I mean, what if you have a Democrat president in office? I mean, it's the same thing here. I mean, they should be careful what they wish for because it could come back and bite them in the ass. So yeah, that's a very good point. This might disenfranchise their own voters, but they're hell-bent on this. Look, I think you were talking about in other areas of the law or in practical world, we have this thing called the mailbox rule, or the code of civil procedure. When we're litigating cases and we're before the courts, if there's a deadline that requires you to submit something by a particular day, if I put it in the mail by that particular day, I'm good. Never in my career has that ever been challenged. Nobody's ever said that, oh, well, you put it in the mail by this day, but we got it a little too late. That's not how it works. There's special rules for it must be received by a certain day or something. But putting it in the mail, having that postmark, entrusting it to the United States Post Office, that takes care of that. So I find this a very difficult argument for them to make. But we'll see how the Supreme Court treats it.
I want to go a little deeper on this. Okay, so first of all, the Supreme Court just granted review, which means they got 4 votes that they wanted to hear this case and decide these issues. You can read something into that. You can read a lot of things into that. It could simply be that the liberal justices are like, look, we have to take a close look at this because this may be garbage. There may be, the more moderate conservatives on the court may feel the same way. And they don't have an oral argument scheduled yet. And this will be one of those cases probably determined at the end of the term. So June, look for a decision, probably no earlier than May or June. I think you have to look one level deeper on this, Shant. I think you have to look at what the Republicans and what MAGA is really trying to do. They're trying to undermine the integrity of the election process in its entirety. Remember, these are people who have come out consistently and said things like, illegal aliens voted, which we know is not true. I mean, did 1 or 2? Sure. But more than a few? No, that didn't happen. They try to say that the election was rigged. They filed lawsuits. Never happened. So it's what they're trying to do. What they really want to do is anytime they lose now, they want to be able to come out and say election integrity. People were voting. It wasn't right. So this is part of a master plan. Don't kid yourself. So I guess that's my last thought on the subject. Yeah. You can give whatever you want. I don't have a prediction, by the way. I'm not making a prediction on this yet at all. I think it's more likely than not to go the right way, that if you deposit something on or before 7 p.m. on election day, it's considered a vote. But we'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and what you just said, the scenario or the goal you just described isn't just like a crazy conspiracy theory. They've tried it before. People literally stormed the Capitol in an expression, I guess that's putting it very kindly, an expression of their frustration with the election process or their disbelief in the result of the election process. I mean, they've literally tried this before. They've challenged election results before. And maybe the outcome kind of doesn't matter, Brian. As you said, this is all about just questioning and undermining the credibility of the election process in order to give them plausible deniability. If they lose, if there's a landslide loss for the Republican Party, maybe having these types of challenges out there and this being in the discussion, the American debate, will justify their attempts to sort of overthrow or disregard the election results. I mean, maybe this is a setup for that. It's not a crazy conspiracy theory. And I think it's important to call it out for that and to recognize it. So, when that happens, people know what's going on. So we'll keep you posted on this. Stay tuned. It might be a while. As Brian said, summer 2026 is when we're going to see this, but we'll see how things shake out in the meantime. So thanks for tuning in to another installment of Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Again, if you like this content, if you like Legal AF, hit that subscribe button, support us, hit that like button, share this whoever you might think might find it informative, because a lot of people don't know a lot of this stuff and don't know what's going on here. And the legal angle behind this is sometimes kind of hard to recognize, to see through those headlines. So hopefully you find this useful. Thanks for tuning in this time, and we'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.